Welcome, ladies, gents, and otherwise amazing people, to another episode of the Coolest Guys You Know podcast. I'm the guy with the beard and glasses, Alex Bagley, and alongside me is my co-host, the guy with the mustache, Jack Hefflinger.
How's it going?
It's going.
Welcome to part 2.
Yeah. I think we're going to kind of go in a direction that we wouldn't have seen last week because of some things that have developed, but I'm telling you right now, it's still going to tie into everything.
Oh, absolutely.
So, obviously, there's been something pretty big going on over the last, week or so.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah. There's been some big stuff going on.
Does anything happen today?
Yeah. Well, last night.
Oh,
Did you see?
I saw that.
Yeah. So I want to dive into this stuff because I know it might sound surprising, but there is a lot of what I was already going to talk about within this whole thing, which is crazy because people were like, oh, it's just a rap battle, music, whatever. But there's a lot. There's a lot there. But first off, let me start by saying, it's a good time to be a Kendrick fan.
It is a very good time.
It's a very good time to be a Kendrick fan. So you listened to Drake's track last night? What'd you think?
I thought he didn't do very well.
I will say, at first I was like, ooh, he kind of hit Kendrick with a haymaker. But then as soon as you start breaking down the lyric, well, first off, it's not that great of a song.
Yeah.
The beat's good. His flow, to be fair, he's not going to go out there doing some Kendrick shit after he just got accused of being a pedophile. He's just out there yeah. But still, his flow was so weak.
Yeah, it was not good.
So you could hear the depression and sadness in him as he was rapping. And yeah, surface level, again, Drake's all surface level. Surface level, it sounds like, oh man, he kind of hit Kendrick the haymaker. He said oh, you thought you had it inside and all this and that.
Right.
But as soon as you start pulling it apart, it just falls right apart. Because it's okay, so you're saying that you fed a mole information to Kendrick. Okay, cool. First off, you didn't provide any proof, and that's an easy. I was listening to Anthony Fantano's reaction. He's like, that's such an easy thing to do. All you have to do if you did that is take some screenshots of you feeding out this information.
Yeah. That's
all you have to do to prove it. Secondly, pretty odd thing to leak out there into the world.
Yeah.
To be I'm going to leak that I'm a pedophile.
Yeah.
I'm going to leak that. Even if it turned out to not be true, that's out in the world now.
Right.
People have that perception of you. If people miss this diss track, people are still going to think you're a pedophile. Mm-hmm. So that's already is that what you were trying to do? If it was, you're still an idiot.
Yep.
And also, if this was what you were trying to do, setting a trap for Kendrick, why did it take you so long to respond? Why didn't you already have this locked and loaded? Why did it take it so long for you to configure everything?
Yeah.
Where Kendrick was able to drop a track 10 minutes after you because he saw what you were going to do coming. Just like you're claiming to do. Actions aren't lining up to the words here.
Yeah.
It's even more of a... Because it just showed what Drake was... First off, this was Drake's only way to defend himself, was to straight up call Kendrick a liar. Because there's nothing else he could do. He couldn't be like, yeah, guys, I'm a pedophile. I own that. I'm owning it. This is the only move he could do, which is why, where at first it seems he threw a haymaker. When you think about it, it's what else was he supposed to do?
Yeah.
This was his only move. In a game of chess, if you're seeing the board, that was the only move he had to do in order to still survive to the next round. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking and zooming out, he's not lasting until the final round.
No.
He's just extending the game out. That's all he's doing.
I can't believe he even released something else at this point. It was
yeah. But he did the move that Kendrick did. He tried to throw Kendrick's own move back at him because Kendrick's been doing that to him.
Right.
But he did it so poorly. And he has such bad lines in there. The thing about the A minor, B sharp.
Oh,
first off, it doesn't even land in terms of flow and everything. No. A minor was so...
it hit so hard.
The way that hit was exactly what Drake does with the meme culture. That is, I'm sure, blowing up in TikTok. I'm not on TikTok.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard, it's pretty on there right now. But also, B sharp. Do you know anything about B sharp?
No.
B sharp isn't a chord. B sharp doesn't exist. It just skips to C.
Okay.
So he tried to be witty with something that doesn't even exist. In fact, Fantano pointed out that B Sharp was actually the name in a Simpsons episode of a quartet, or what is it? Barbershop Quartet? Yeah. They were called the B Sharps because they were idiots. And so it was supposed to point to how big of an idiot they all were.
Right.
How big of idiots they all were. You have the line where he says, I don't ever take a second look at a teenager. I would never take a second look at a teenager. Yeah. Where if you pull that apart, it's like
so you're taking
one look.
He's like, I'll look, but I won't look again.
And also, like, you know, he keeps saying he's spitting facts. Kendrick's not. That he's got, or Kendrick doesn't have proof of anything. But it's like, yeah, he hasn't come out like nothing solidly's come out about like the sex trafficking, but there is stuff about you and 17-year-old. There's a video of you and a 17-year-old at a concert. There's this stuff about Millie Bobby Brown, like, and this has been years. Like, this isn't like recent. This has been stuff that's built up over years on you, Drake. And you're just trying to act like it doesn't exist. He's just trying to act like it doesn't exist. Yeah. Yeah, and then the I'm too famous to not get caught is...
that is...
And it just points to Drake's worldview. Like, he says that thinking that that's a good defense, but all that says is, to Drake, fame is important. Fame protects him. He's obscuring it. He's using it to say, like, no, fame, like, I'm so famous, if I was doing anything, they'd catch me. What he's really saying is... I'm famous enough to cover this all up.
Yeah.
What he's really saying is, if I throw this line out there, I'm so famous, people aren't even going to dig into it because I've got all my fans on me that are just going to eat up the shit that I give them.
Yeah.
I can just give them surface level crap like I've been doing for years, and they won't second guess a thing. Which is why like, if you then go from that and go back to everything that Kendrick has said so far in lyrics, Kendrick already said that he was going to lie on his family. Drake did that.
Mm-hmm.
He also said that... Hang on, I kind of lost it. I've got a lot of like emotion tied up to it, so I have to like sort through it. Because I'm a huge Kendrick fan. So there is like the ego and that emotion there. But I think, what was I about to say? Oh, there was a line. What were we just talking about?
He was so tied up in the
God dang it.
Like all the fame and the...
Yeah, there's a line there that Kendrick said in one of his songs.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to... I don't think you'll be able to find it. Okay, it was on Not Like Us. There was a line he said in there. It's pissed me off that I can't remember what it was. I knew I was going to get going too much, and then I was going to like lose steam at some point. God dang it. Okay, we were talking about pedophilia stuff. We're going to spend like 10 minutes on this because I won't let it go. All right, well... Just give me some of your input on some of this, because I don't think it's just going to come back to me. It'll probably come back later.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, originally I just thought it was interesting, and then once Kendrick kind of started like going hard, and it's like, oh, Drake's actually just a awful, terrible person.
I got it. Okay. This was the line that I was trying to think of. In Not Like Us, Kendrick says, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's like you underestimate the audience. They're not slow. They're smart. They're keeping up. Because that's how Drake has always dealt with his audience. He treats us like we're idiots.
Okay.
Kendrick doesn't do that. At least not as much anymore. He might have back in the day. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't do that anymore. He trusts the audience to figure it out themselves. Which is why something like the allegations levied against him by Drake for the wife abuse.
Right.
Everybody's like, oh, Kendrick's dodging it. Like, Kendrick hasn't spoken on it directly. And it's because, first off, he has kind of alluded to the fact, like, of his opinions on it by just straight up calling Drake a liar multiple times, saying that he's lied.
Right.
He's not calling it out specifically on purpose because it's not worth him diving into.
Yeah.
That's not what it is at stake.
It's not worth
here.
giving it credit.
Drake is playing a different game than Kendrick is. Drake is playing the game of reputation. Drake is saying, I'm going to destroy your reputation. Kendrick is saying, I don't give a fuck about my reputation, because that was what Mr. Morale was all about.
Oh, okay.
And that is what that's why he keeps bringing up Mr. Morale a lot in his lyrics, is because he knows Drake doesn't understand what Mr. Morale is about.
Okay.
In fact, in Drake's new release, he says the Mother Eye, which is in reference to Mother Eye Sober. And he says, oh, Kendrick was molested. But in Mother Eye Sober, Kendrick is talking about his mom having been molested in her past.
Okay.
And she suspects that Kendrick was molested by his cousin. Kendrick wasn't, but he starts to not understand whether or not he is true in that. He starts to doubt his reality because his mother is so insistent on it. But at the end, he settles like, no, I wasn't.
Okay.
It was just the passing of generational trauma. His mother was so concerned about that happening to him because it happened to her. That is the whole point of that song. And what Drake got out of it was Kendrick was molested. Him and all of his ghostwriters, who is another underestimated part of this. Kendrick is writing all of this stuff himself.
Right.
Drake is sitting down with a group of writers to write this stuff.
Someone in the studio on this last one was like, Drake, you cooked, man.
Well, I don't know, because I don't know Drake's ghostwriters. I feel like there are some that know how big of an idiot he is, but he's writing a paycheck for him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So they're like, yeah, sure, Drake. Yeah, whatever you say. Yeah. There were some lines in there that should not have made it into that song at all, that were not that great. But yeah, so with Mr. Morale, what Kendrick was doing was Kendrick, having gone through all of the therapy that he went through and ego death and all this stuff that he was delving into himself. What he was doing with Mr. Morale, and what some people still, I don't think, quite understand because they're so focused on the one element of it, is Kendrick was already exposed. This is why Drake coming after him the way he is already funny to me, is he's already admitted that he's a hypocrite. Like, Drake took that shot where, like, you're a hypocrite. And
right.
Kendrick has never, in this argument so far, denied that he could be hypocritical in this argument. To some extent. When you get into the pedophilia stuff, there's a lot less gray area, at least in public opinion.
Yeah.
But in terms of how Kendrick feels about his reputation, Kendrick already sabotaged his reputation with Mr. Morale. He had Kodak Black on there. He said the F word in the, not fuck, but the other one. He did those things, and people think that he did it because he doesn't care, but he did it on purpose. He did it because he used to use that word, but nobody had seen him use that word, so he could hide behind the fact that nobody had ever heard him say that word. He could just be like, oh yeah, I never said it. I never said it.
Right.
But the fact that he put it in a song and put it out, now he can never deny that he used that word. People have heard him use that word.
Yeah.
Kodak Black, he has partnered with people like that all throughout his career. People always have shady pasts that work in the rap industry. For him to sit there and deny that he's worked with somebody like Kodak Black is a lot different than to work with Kodak Black in front of everybody.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that is the reason he did those things, was he was admitting to the stuff that he had done, not just in words, but in actions.
Right.
And that was the whole, like, if you listen to Mr. Morale, that's what he's saying throughout. When we're talking about cancel culture and that stuff, the way that cancel culture operates is that there are two sides. There's the people who really don't give a crap, the Drakes, who will do this shit and they're like, I'm going to get away with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And then there's the people who are calling that behavior out, but at the same time won't admit that they're doing that behavior.
Right.
Those are the two people in the world. And then there's the middle ground. Because the reality is that every single person in the world is a hypocrite. There is no such thing as a not hypocritical person.
Yeah.
There is only...
Except for me, but yeah.
There is only honest hypocrites and liars. And Kendrick is calling Drake out for being a liar. When he says the line, let me pull your mask off, let's see what's underneath, or something along that lines. That's what he's saying. He's saying, you've been running under this facade for years. You've been living in this fantasy for years, that you're just a partier, having a good time, living the rich and famous life. Everything's good, I'm fine. Where it's like, all this stuff has been going on underneath of all of that.
Right.
You know, you've been having all the, at least allegation ones. I don't think I think there's something backing it up if Kendrick is pulling it out. But, you know, like, we don't know anything about Drake in terms of like who he is as a person outside of what he's shown, which is that he's not a great person.
Right.
But he hasn't come out and said, he's never delved into himself the way that Kendrick has, and definitely not openly. Yeah. And that's the lack of maturity comparative to Kendrick. Kendrick has gone through that shit. He knows himself so well. That's why he is doing backflips around Drake in the studio, is because Kendrick knows himself as a person, and therefore he knows himself as an artist. He knows where he can go. He knows that he can do a party bop like he just released. He can go and do this abstract psychoanalyzation and meet the grams. Like, he knows who he is. Drake does not even know who he is because he won't admit that to himself.
Right. He's also just so surface level anyways. He's like, I doubt he ever wanted to delve too much into that. He just wanted to be the hit maker party guy.
Well, yeah, it's because, and there's a reason he stays on the surface level, is because he doesn't want to face the reality of the darkness that lies in him. So in psychology, there are two important things I want to pull out from psychology for this: the ego and the shadow self. And for Drake, all of that shit, that's the shadow self. That is the part of himself that he does not want to admit exists. He wants to act like it isn't there. But at the same time, he's still doing those things. He's just doing them in privacy, hiding them, because they're not socially acceptable, which is how the shadow self forms. That is all the things that you don't want people to know, because if people knew that, it would endanger your acceptance into society.
Okay.
If people knew that, you'd become a social outcast. You would have things like what happens with Kendrick, where people are trying to cancel him because of his running with Kodak Black or saying the F word.
Yeah.
Like, that is what Kendrick was trying to say on Mr. Morale in that, and why he openly did those things. And with the ego, I think a lot of people don't quite, like, ego gets used a lot. People say ego a lot when talking about people, but I don't think people actually know what the ego is. I saw an article talking about the whole rap battle between Drake and Kendrick, and it said these are just two people fighting for their egos, which I find hilarious, because to me, like I said, that proves that you don't quite understand what ego is. Not that Kendrick doesn't have an ego. He does.
Right.
But every human being has an ego. Again, the ego tells you that you're not a hypocrite. It tells you, I follow my morals. I follow my values to a T. I'm perfect. And people will say, like, the opposite of that. They'll say, oh, I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. But their actions don't back that up. What they say to others won't back that up.
Okay.
Because they just ignore the parts of themselves that aren't perfect. They just ignore it. Or if it does get brought up, it brings them so much pain that then they push it away because they don't want to face it.
Okay.
So Kendrick has already openly admitted to that. So therefore, he's admitted to himself, I have an ego. You know, that's just who I am.
Right.
You know, we all have egos. This is just who I am. So that takes away the fake Kendrick. The Kendrick that is going to free the slaves, as Drake said. Like the savior. That's the whole point of that savior thing motif in Mr. Morale, is that he's not a savior. He isn't perfect. He can't be Jesus Christ because Jesus Christ was perfect. He's not perfect.
Right.
He's a human being. But Drake is still living in the fantasy world. And so for him, he's ignoring all of that stuff about him. Quite frankly, I think Drake does think he's a good person. If you look at his line about Kendrick being a fake activist, I think it's because Drake thinks he's a good activist.
Okay.
But also, again, that shows Drake's worldview. Because first off, Kendrick is a very active activist. He supports his community a lot in volunteer work and donations. Like, that is a ludicrous statement. That is a pure lie.
Yeah.
Lobbed at him. But I think Drake actually believes it, because in his world, everybody's a fake activist. Why? Because he's a fake activist.
Right.
And so because he thinks these things about himself, he projects them on everybody else. If I think this way, this is how everyone else thinks. If I think activism is fake and is used for my own benefit, then everybody thinks that way.
Right.
So for Drake, he's living in a world where he has to act this way because everybody else is acting this way, and this is his only way to survive. Everybody else is acting fake. So I just need to act fake as well. I need to play the game, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I need to climb the social ladder. But there is no social ladder. Everybody is equal as individuals. Everybody is a hypocrite, like I've said. Everybody has their own problems that they're dealing with. But again, you don't want to admit that because you want to fit it in to the social construct.
That's interesting.
And I think people don't understand that the ego is the voice in your head that says that's right and that's wrong. The ego is not just that's wrong. It is saying that there even exists a right and wrong. That is your ego. The ego is the thing that makes judgments on the world. The ego is the thing that says pedophilia even is wrong. That's still the ego.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't necessarily want to live in a world where pedophilia is right.
Yeah.
But if you don't understand that morality is a human construct, then you're stuck inside of it, if that makes sense. You're stuck in a world where there is only right or wrong.
Okay.
And so by doing so, you create heroes and villains. And that's where like the line of Dark Knight, where it's like you either die a hero or you live long enough to be a villain. What that means is you either die before people find out who you really are, or people find out who you really are.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. Some people are lucky enough to never have anything brought to light on them, or it's so small that nobody ever even notices it. And some people aren't. Some people will get just slammed.
Yeah.
It's a lot of luck-based stuff.
Wow. You've thought a lot about this.
No. Well, that's another thing. That's why I like Kendrick so much, is because there's depth to him. And I know a lot of people, like even Chloe yesterday was making fun. She's like, your Kendrick fans are just like Taylor fans. Like you're just trying to analyze like everything, was like what she was like saying. I'm like, yeah, I am trying to analyze everything because there's stuff there. Like I'm not going to analyze a Drake song. There's nothing to there.
Right.
It's all already said in what I heard the first listen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get anything more out of a Drake song. And why I think that this rap battle is more important than a rap battle, and quite frankly, isn't really just a rap battle, is because it's the warring of ideologies in modern day society. Because Drake, and that's why Kendrick hates Drake so much, is because Drake embodies every single thing that Kendrick was trying to point out in Mr. Morale. Drake is chronically online. Drake is all about online. Drake is all about social fitting in.
Right.
And the social hierarchy. That is pure Drake. All surface level stuff. And that's why it's so funny that Not Like Us turned it all in on Drake. Kendrick talked about integrity, I think in Euphoria. Talked about Drake not having integrity. And again, this gets into what I was just talking about with the ego, where I think some people think that because be quite frank, I have no idea whether or not the wife, or wouldn't be wife beating because it's not his wife yet, whether or not he abused his fiance or not. And I think to some people, if he did, that proves that Kendrick lacks integrity. But I, again, don't think those people would understand what integrity really means. Because what integrity really means is that something holds firm, right? Integrity for like a house is whether or not it withstands a storm.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that you don't make mistakes. It's that, are you capable of handling those mistakes and growing as a human being and as an individual? Drake is collapsing right now.
Yeah.
All that surface, because he has no depth. He has no structure there. It's all surface level. You're seeing everything that's there already. So when you start attacking that and delving in behind it and pulling out, like, it's like going into a house and like, you see the beautiful outside, but then you go inside and you have somebody investigating and you start to see like, oh, this beam's rotting. You know, this water line is broken and all that. And that's what Kendrick is doing to Drake. He is going inside of his beautiful mansion and he's saying, look, the walls, they're rotting. Like, the supports in this building are going to break within like a few years. Like, this is not built to last. This is built for a moment. This is built for you to look at it and be like, oh, that's really good looking.
Right.
But like in 10 years, you're going to forget about it. Drake's career is on the downswing already, even before all this happened.
Yeah.
And in like 10 years, I think that the only thing Drake's going to be known for is how he went out, which is not going to be very pretty.
Yeah.
I don't think people are going to remember like nobody's going to really, like, obviously there will be people.
Oh, well,
for nostalgia
sure.
purposes. Like, even me, I have Drake songs that I have attachments to because they were around when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to sit there and listen to a Drake album when I'm like 50 years old. I will listen to a Kendrick album at 50 years old because I could probably still learn some things from that. Because Kendrick has something to learn. Kendrick has stuff in his music that you can put into your everyday life. Like, he is teaching you how to be a human being. Drake is telling you, you don't need to be a human being. You just need to go out and party and have a good time and forget about everything. Why does he want you to forget about everything? Because if you forget about everything, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. He can pull in your money and live up his life.
Fucking Drake. He'll be remembered so much just for the meme stuff and not at all for the music.
But I also don't want to put this in the context that it's just Drake, that this is only, because that is something too that that is another element of cancel culture, is just, it was just this one person that was the problem. And now that we've dealt with them, it'll never happen again. We've cured society of this disease. Drake is a symptom of something larger. Drake is a big symptom, he's the face of it for at least music industry. But Drake was brought up the way that he was brought up because of deeper systemic style issues. Like, I'm sure that Drake probably heard a lot in his young life that he should just not listen to the haters type stuff. You know, like, not in that context necessarily, but like, you know, people are going to try and tell you that you're wrong, and, you know, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to, like, not listen to them and just live your truth, you know, like that type of stuff, which is something that is very liberal, you know, if you think about it. That's how liberal parents want to raise their kids. You know, you kind of coddle them. You say, like, oh, no, you're perfect the way you are, and this and that. Right. Because that instills that ego. That says, don't listen to other people. You don't need to listen to other people. People don't know you, you know, like, which has its good qualities. Like, there is good reasoning to it. Yeah. But we ignore that there's a flip side to everything. There's a positive and negative to everything. By telling somebody to not listen to haters, you're also telling them, don't ever take criticism. Yeah. Don't ever take negative feedback. You're perfect the way you are. You don't need to grow. You don't need to become a better person. You're as good as it gets already. And so for Drake, he doesn't give a fuck what Kendrick says to him. I mean, this whole rap battle has proved how little Drake's really paying attention because of all of his slip-ups and his lyrics and stuff. Like, he's not really paying attention to what Kendrick is saying to him, not fully. He's taking snippets. He's treating Kendrick how everybody treats Drake, where he's just treating Kendrick like, oh, it's all surface level. Right. There's nothing there. It's just like, oh, he took a shot at me about my kid, called me a pedophile. Like, that's the big takeaway. And it's like, Kendrick is doing so much more to you than just that. Like, there's even business to this, too. Kendrick has ruined Drake business-wise. Because Drake is never going to be able... Drake does so many advertisements.
He's not going to be able to do any of this stuff.
People are, especially in today's... Kendrick is using cancel culture against Drake, knowingly. Yeah. Because he knows how cancel culture works. Yeah, Drake's never going to be able to work with any advertisers from this. No. And he also sabotaged a lot of his features and artists that are going to want to work with him. Oh, for sure. He called out people by name on purpose on that last diss, Kendrick did. Because he's putting Future, he's putting 21 Savage, he didn't say Lil Yachty, that was a different song. Lil Baby, like, he called them out for a reason, because he's saying, are you going to side with this guy? Are you going to go back and work with this guy after everything you just found out? Are you going to feed into the system that I'm pointing out? Like, you know, that Drake's just harvesting you for his own money? And I have a feeling that they've already kind of thought that. But for Future and for Lil Baby and for them, even though they always suspected Drake was using them, I think they were afraid of losing what Drake gave them. Yeah. You know, because Drake gave them numbers. But it's the understanding of who really has the power in that situation. Because for Drake, he wants you to think you don't have any power. I'm the one with all the power here. Like, I'm the one that gave you your first #1 hit.
Right.
I'm the one that did this. I'm the one that did that. You'd be nothing without me. Because by doing that, he keeps them right where they're at. He keeps them coming back, and he can just keep using their talents over and over. But quite frankly, Future especially does not need Drake's help. Future is well loved by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even for his own mistakes and qualities as a human being. All of those artists could easily stand on their own without Drake.
Oh, for sure.
Drake is the one dependent upon them. They're not dependent upon Drake. There's the flip side of that.
Yeah.
There. And I want to go back to the abuse allegations too, because I know that actually before I get to that, I also want to point out that with Drake's recent release, all of his points are points that his fans are making. It's not even original thoughts. It's just seeing what's on the internet.
It's just scrolling Twitter.
He's just scrolling Twitter and being like, oh, yeah, they're right. Kendrick hasn't.
Yeah.
Like, he's just saying, he is giving people what they are saying. He's just spitting it back to them. He's not creating his own stuff. He's just spitting. He's like, oh, you think, because I think there were theories already on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter anymore, but from what I've heard, there were theories on Twitter that Drake was playing Kendrick, that he was feeding him misinformation.
Oh, yeah. There were definitely some.
So Drake just took that and was like,
And he was
that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Works. It's literally Glass Onion. It's literally Glass Onion.
Yes.
But anyways, the abuse allegations. There are two reasons why, or there are pathways in which I could see why Kendrick is remaining silent on that, or at least not taking it on directly. First off, silence speaks volumes too. Silence has its place in communication.
Right.
The fact that he's not saying something is saying something. And for Kendrick, it's either this, going back to the reputation thing.
Mm-hmm.
He had said in Euphoria, I already know you're going to take shots at my family, that you're going to try and lie because you heard Mr. Morale. Because in Mr. Morale, Kendrick gets very personal. He talks about issues in his personal life and in his family. So it'd be very easy to extrapolate that and be like, I bet he beat his woman. Or if he didn't, people will believe it because now that he's put out Mr. Morale, he has that reputation.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a lie that I think people are willing to believe. It doesn't matter if it has truth or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's one route. And so if that is like the route, like the reasoning, if it is that it's not true and Kendrick knows that it's not true, him saying anything isn't going to help with that situation.
Yeah.
It is very hard to prove a negative. That's why you're innocent until proven guilty. It is very hard for him to prove that it didn't happen.
Right.
Because even if Whitney herself came out and said, no, he didn't do it, people would be like, oh, Kendrick's just manipulating. Or, Kendrick has all this power. Like, yeah, I don't believe it. Like, no matter what Kendrick threw out, nobody was going to believe it. Nobody was going to believe it.
Yeah.
All that was from Drake was a smoke screen. That's why at the end of that song, he's like, I think he says like, I'm going on vacation, Yeah. That's why he said that, is because he thought he was throwing a PR fire into Kendrick's face. And he's like, you go deal with that.
Right.
You're not even going to be able to put a diss track out because you're going to be having to deal with all the rumors for that. Like, it's a smoke screen. It was, get the pressure off of me. I'm going to go away. Nobody's going to find out anything because you're going to be dealing with that. Nobody's even going to trust you as a source of information because now they're going to be like, oh man, he beats women. We can't trust anything he says. It was a smokescreen. Or alternatively, maybe it is true. Maybe he does have inside information. Maybe Kendrick was having domestic issues. Yeah, domestic issues. And that's also why Kendrick knew that this was the route that Drake was going to take, because he knew Drake was already aware of it.
Yeah.
But if that's the case too, everybody's going to want to view Kendrick as the bad guy because abusers are not seen well. But let's turn this around on Drake for a second. If this is true, what's Drake doing in this situation to Whitney? Because Whitney is a human being with her own capabilities.
Right.
And even if it's true, the fact that it's not already public tells me that Whitney has chosen to keep this private.
Yeah.
If it is true. Whitney has chosen to keep this between her and Kendrick for them to sort out. This is a private matter. And Drake is exposing it because, again, it gives him clout. It gives him a reputation. I'm exposing an abuser.
Right.
But he's making Whitney into a victim for his own cause. He is exploiting Whitney's victimhood for himself.
Yeah.
If Whitney chose to keep that private and Drake is now releasing to the public, Kendrick is not the only bad guy there.
Right.
Drake is exploiting Whitney to put pressure off of himself.
Yeah.
He's saying, well, Whitney has this problem. Because Drake also knows that in public perception, like, abuse isn't obviously great. And that cancel culture would go after Kendrick for that.
Right.
And that's what the back and forth is. It's who's going to get canceled out of all this.
Yeah.
Kendrick, I think, went into this knowing that he wasn't going to make it out of it unscathed.
Right.
Like, you don't go into a war or into a battle without getting a few shots.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Drake knew that. I think Drake,
I think he thought he was going to come out on top unscathed.
I still think he thinks he's going to get out of this without having to deal with any repercussions for his actions, any consequences.
Just crazy.
Kendrick is willingly okay with taking the consequences of his actions. He's okay with being judged for whether or not he's an abuser or not.
Right.
That is just something that may have happened. He has skeletons in his closet. He's not a great person. He has issues. But he's okay with being judged for it because he doesn't need society as a whole to accept him. He needs to be able to deal with the people in his actual life. If him and Whitney chose to keep that private, that means that they're sorting it out on their own.
Right.
That if he did abuse her, they've chosen to work through it without making it public. That maybe, I don't know if they're together or not, because, I mean, Drake says that maybe they're not together.
Okay.
But if they are still together, that means that Whitney chose herself to still stick with Kendrick and work through it.
Yeah.
That was her own decision. Don't treat her like a victim when she doesn't want to be treated like a victim. When she thinks that she is capable of being abused and still finding her own way through it. When you start telling people that, hey, you suffered this, you need to act this way.
Right.
You're not helping them. You're not helping victims by telling them that, like, you need to speak up on this. You need to speak up on this.
Yeah.
That's not. If somebody doesn't want to talk about their trauma and you are telling them that they need to talk about their trauma because it's the right thing to do, that is not a good person. You are not a good person in that scenario. You are not as righteous as you think you are. Because the morally righteous automatically creates being morally righteous creates the structure where somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong. Somebody has to be the villain and somebody has to be the victim. Just that philosophy, just that way of looking at it frames it that way. There's no middle ground. There's no like, yeah, she was abused, but she's a strong woman who can figure it out on her own.
Right.
Without the need for your freaking help.
Because that's what all victims need is Drake to help them out.
Yeah, no, I have so much to say about that stuff. So much to say about that stuff.
It's very interesting.
Do you feel like you've learned anything from it?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you kind of see where I'm talking about when I'm talking about philosophies and psychology and stuff? Do you have any,
the way we live our lives.
Do you have any opinions contrary? Anything that...
I don't think so.
Or even taking away from Drake and Kendrick, because I feel like that's a little bit easier to take a side on. Do you find anything in terms of my philosophies for either that or the previous episode that you want to expound on?
I don't.
Because I know last episode, I mean, with what I said then, that you were kind of like, I don't know if I agree with that stuff.
Right. Now,
it's different. I'm not framing this as the Kendrick Drake thing.
Okay, I know, what I need from you is just a brief reminder of what you said. Because my can't quite remember.
Okay. So I'm speaking more on when I was talking about I don't believe that we have free will, and then that things have a reasoning to them, or me talking about like the omens from The Alchemist and being in real life, like that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that with that stuff, I think we all for sure have free will. I think that I think thinking that you don't have free will sometimes makes you maybe choose paths based on that and not based on necessarily what you might want to actually do. So I think you're almost letting like some random external factor kind of taking the wheel and driving you a certain place.
You think that it's avoiding responsibility, right? You think that it's
a little bit, yeah,
avoiding responsibility for your life, right?
Yeah. Okay, so that means you've definitely thought about this. So what's your little counter there?
So my counter is that the reason people think that, the reason why something like free will and not having it makes people so afraid.
I wouldn't say it makes me afraid. I just think that I control my own
I'm talking
actions.
more generally here, but I think that there is that part of the reason that there's such a no, we have to have free will is because it is a scary thought to not have free will, right? It's scary to think that I'm not in control of my own life.
Right.
That's a scary thought for people. But it also, I think, is rooted in the fact that if you can't take responsibility for your actions, guess what you can't take responsibility for? The good things that you do. You can't say, I'm a great person. Look what I've done. Look at all the accomplishments I've done. Because now you have to say, it was just fate. It was just how things lined up. I didn't do anything. It was just given to me. But there's a flip side to that. Anytime that you want to take responsibility for something, you have to take responsibility for it at all times. So not only do you have to take responsibility when things go right, you also have to take responsibility for when things go wrong.
Right.
For every accomplishment that you say, look what I did, you also have to admit, look what I did when you fail or when you make a mistake. And so when I'm talking about not having free will, what I'm saying is that if both ways you're responsible, if every time that you make a mistake and fail, you are responsible for it, just as you are for being good, then why does it matter whether or not you're responsible for it? Because another thing about human beings is we're going to fail every freaking time.
Oh, yeah.
When I was, one of the philosophers that my therapist brought up, Emile Chiron, who I think I don't know enough about philosophy, but I think in the philosophy circle, a lot of people kind of don't like him because he's got a pessimistic worldview.
Okay.
And I think the idea that we don't have free will is also seen as a pessimistic worldview.
Probably a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think very much so. Yeah. But Chiron, one of the big contributions he had to philosophy was that, first off, philosophy is worthless. He was a philosopher who hated philosophy.
Okay.
But what he said is that human beings are inherently flawed creatures. And if you are inherently flawed, you can never do anything perfectly, which means no matter how much you learn, no matter how much you do, no matter how far you go in life, you are never going to be the perfect, good person that you think that you can be. You are never going to be that. You're never going to accomplish every single thing that you want to set out to accomplish. You're going to fail. And not only that, you're going to fail the majority of the time.
Right.
And in fact, even when you succeed, it's a failure. It's just that we've given it the light of success.
Okay.
Because what you're doing is you're pulling a moment of time out from the rest of things. You're saying, look at this accomplishment on its own. But you're not you're avoiding everything that comes after that or came before that. You're avoiding all the other things to say, this one thing is so good.
Right.
Because a lot of bad things come out of good things.
Yeah.
And a lot of bad things can turn into good things. This is why I like the yin-yang symbol so much. Is because I think that is the most accurate interpretation of reality that there is. That there,
even though you have two sides to it, there is still the good and the bad, or the bad and the good.
Yeah, that part, and also the way that the yin-yang symbol looks. So you have the white that's good, going up, and it's that weird shape, and then the black is also that weird, it's not just a perfect cut a circle in half.
Right.
It's kind of like a flow. And there's a reason that it flows like that is because where good and evil switch off is very muddied. It can be dissected into looking like this is good, this is evil, end of story.
Right.
but it actually kind of flows into each other. You know, good things create bad things, create good things, create bad things, and it creates this circle, and you don't know where it starts. It's the chicken or the egg. Was it the good thing or was it the bad thing?
Okay.
It's all muddied together. That's what reality is. If you really look out into things, things just are. There is no judgment there. That's not a good table, that's a table.
Right.
Good is something that I'm applying to it myself. That's just my viewpoint of it.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing with human beings all the time.
You're saying nothing is perfect. Watch this.
It's pretty good.
Like,
I don't know what that has to do with being perfect. Is it that that's the perfect joke? Is that?
I mean, look how perfect it looks. You can't tell.
I'm just curious, like, why? I'm curious what you think is wrong with my worldview. Not because I think that it's necessarily that I can't be wrong, because actually that is a part of my worldview, is that, like,
Well, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
very much so wrong. I mean, I
Yeah.
just have laid this out.
Right.
I am just as flawed as everybody else. I'm sure that you could tear apart everything I say.
Yeah. Well, with some of these things, I mean, we'll never obviously know. There's just things you don't know. Maybe there is no free will. Maybe everything is controlled by a destiny or some higher being. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I know from my worldview, at least. What?
No, I'm just.
From my worldview, I don't know. I think that we control our own what we do. We control our actions.
Yeah.
You know.
And
And
like,
yeah, nothing's perfect when nobody's perfect. We all do
Yeah.
everything wrong, but the right things, I think, can be celebrated, and some people definitely deserve to take credit for some of the right things they do.
Yeah. Because I'm also of the opinion, and this is why, like, I have nothing wrong with your worldview of having free will. I don't think that people shouldn't think that they have free will. That's just what I personally believe. Because, quite frankly, I believe that everything that exists I think I've told you this, everything that exists in the world deserves to exist. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist.
Right.
It's the physics, the law of physics of matter cannot be created nor destroyed. Everybody thinks of that as like, oh, we're just talking about like physical matter. But I think it goes beyond that. I think it goes into even consciousness, and I think I've talked about that earlier in the podcast, or things like judgments and like actions and all of this, and behaviors and philosophies. All of it deserves to exist. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. Because if you think about it, it doesn't make sense to say that something doesn't deserve to exist,
Right.
or to say that something doesn't exist, or that it can't exist. Because it's like, I can point to it. It's right
Yeah.
there. Like, you can't tell me that this kettle doesn't exist. It's right here.
Yeah.
Or you can tell me that it doesn't exist, but then it's nothing exists,
Yeah.
which is also something that I believe is true.
Okay.
I believe that things both exist and don't exist.
And see, I think that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that it's coming from the different perspective of like someone who's a more spiritual person and someone who is most certainly not. Right. So I don't have those kind of more, I don't even know what's called, like bigger, more obscure kind of views. I view everything as what I can see, what I know to be true.
You don't have
At least
to.
myself.
You don't have to like be so easy on me. You're saying that my views are impractical, right?
Well,
there's no
not
practical
necessarily.
application.
Like I'm not going to say like somebody who goes to church and anything like you're stupid for doing that. How would you believe
Yeah.
that? I get that everybody has their own beliefs, and I know that I'm certainly not right in all of mine
what do
or
you-
any of mine probably.
What do you think spiritualism is? Like, to be spiritual, what do you think is the basis? Like, what do you think would
I
be
think
defined
it's
as
just
spiritual?
if spiritual is someone who, or it's just you at least are thinking that there are things outside of what we can see or know to be true. That there is still more to it outside of that.
Okay, so then you're saying that you don't think that there's anything beyond what we know.
I think there's stuff
Extrapolating
beyond
your-
what we know, but I think that So like when you said, you see as like when you die, you become ash, and as ash, you go back into the earth and into a tree. And so you're never really dead. So like I would assume is a more spiritual kind of view on that is to me where I'm like, well, as a person, you're dead. Like once you're dead, you're gone. The ashes don't matter. It's matter at that point.
Well, I also said it was matter.
You did. You did.
So what I'm trying to poke around here is that what I really think, and this isn't just with you, but what I really think is happening a lot is that people want to stop the wheel halfway through. So you want to be able to say, like, nothing matters, right? Hang on, I'm kind of losing my thought here.
I think things matter.
Okay. Well, see, now you're contradicting yourself.
Am I?
Yeah. You've said a couple different ways here.
I think actions that you do matter. I think the way we treat people matters. I think the way that we live our lives and
yeah, but okay. So we ended last episode.
I think it matters to. At least it matters to me the way I do my things. It might not matter to other people the way they live their lives, the way they do their things. To me, it matters to me because I want to try and at least put out something good.
But what did you say? Do you remember what you said about the reasoning last week? When I said, like, there's believing there's a reason for things and believing there's not a reason for things?
I don't remember what.
Okay, so I said that there's believing that things happen for a reason and that there's a reason for, or and then there's thinking that things don't happen for a reason. So what you're saying is that there is a reason, but there's not a reason. Because you told me last week that there isn't a reason, but now you're telling me that there is a reason.
I'm saying things don't necessarily happen for a reason. Things can just happen. But I'm saying that also, I want things to just certain things matter. I don't know. Is that really contradicting myself? I mean,
yeah, it is. Because you're saying that things don't matter, but then again, they do matter. All you're saying is that you're choosing what matters, which is fair, right?
Right, because I'm me. Obviously, everybody chooses what they want to matter.
Yeah, but that means that reason does exist, that you're creating your own reason.
Yeah.
So there is a reason, because you're making the reason.
Yeah, I guess there is, yeah.
Which is something that Sharon said, which is that we're always going to create beliefs.
Yeah.
We can't not create beliefs. Whether or not there is a belief, which Sharon believed that there isn't, that there's nothing to life, that there's no God, nothing. It's just random what it is. Very much in line with your views on that. But that despite that, humans are hardwired to create their own reasoning. So it doesn't really matter to think that there's nothing beyond.
Right.
Because even if you think that there's nothing beyond, that is a belief in itself. We're always going to create beliefs.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying about contradiction, I'm not pointing that out to make fun of you. I'm pointing that out to say that everybody is contradictory. Everything contradicts itself. That is reality. Reality contradicts itself. When you try to make reality into a logical thing, when you try to create reasoning and all this and that, you ignore the illogical, the unknown, like you said, like spiritualism. Like that can't exist in this world because it's logical, right? Like we have to have something has to be proven by science. That's all that's real is what's proven by science. But if you use logic, it defeats itself because in order for logic to exist, there has to be its opposite. There has to be not being non-logical or illogical. In order for it to be logical, there has to be an illogical thing. So therefore, an illogical reasoning exists.
Right.
Therefore, the unknown exists. Not everything is known. And I know that you're saying that the unknown exists, that you just don't care. Is that what you're...
obviously there's things unknown that exist, but I think that in my worldview, there's certain things that I think myself don't really exist. There are certain, the most religious things. I just don't think it actually exists. I don't know for certain. It's just what I think.
No, that's fair. And now I want to talk about what I think of as spiritualism.
Yeah.
And why I differentiate it from religion.
Yeah, for sure. It's different.
Yeah. To me, spiritualism is a very personal thing. It is about figuring out your own beliefs and who you are. And by doing that, it allows you to connect to something more, if that makes sense.
Mm.
See, like, a lot of religion is just like, there's a God that exists, we obey him,
Right.
that's it. And it's universal. I don't think it's universal. I think it fluctuates from person to person. I think that, and I don't think that that makes it wrong. I don't think that that means that somebody is wrong to believe in the Christian God.
Right.
Or, I don't know, to be a Buddhist or whatnot. I think that it's a very personal thing that you figure out on your own what you want to be attracted to. But that what a lot of religions do is they polish that away. They polish away the individuality. We're all the same. We
Right.
all have to believe the same things. So I have a useless philosophy, which I know that I've read that book in front of you, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So Taoism is a very heavy influence on a lot of my philosophies. Because Taoism is just like I've been saying. It's just that, like, things are the way they are.
Right.
Like, you're not going to do, it's the lack of free will. It's just good things come, bad things come. You're not going to be able to stop one. And if you try to, you're just going to bring it on. By trying to live in a world that is always positive and always good, you just invite the negativity into the life. It just draws it right out.
Right.
A lot of the worst things in human history have been started with good aspirations.
Yeah.
As they say, the path to hell is paved, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
And the reason why Taoism kind of takes, or at least there is sects of Taoism that are very religious and have gods and all this and that. But in terms of a philosophy and from what the stuff that I've been reading on it, the takes on it, the reason that it's actually a good thing that it's useless is because you can't therefore use it to do something wrong. You can't use it to create evil in the world.
Okay.
Because evil is created by the very idea that there is evil. Taoism is very much about avoiding, or not even avoiding, because it's unavoidable. It's very much just awareness. And that's why, like, I don't care about free will. I care about being aware.
Okay.
I view this as like, this is a ride. I'm here. I'm living out a life. That's it. I don't really have the impact on it that I want to have. I can sit here and say, I have free will. I'm doing the things I do. When I break it down, where do I have free will to do what I want to do? I was born into a life that I didn't ask to be born into, with a background that was completely out of my control and influences everything that I did going forward from that moment. Where at any point have I had free will? Because anybody who lives the life that I lived will take the same course, the same actions, because they will have the information that I have, the worldview that I have. Because everything that's in my head will be in their head. Like, they won't be able to pull their own outlook into my life because they're living my life, not their life.
Right.
So, like, I can't sit here and tell you, like, don't believe what you want to believe because I haven't lived your life. I don't know what you've experienced. I don't know the experiences that you've gone through. Those have formed you into the person that you are for a reason. Like that. It's just how it is.
And see, I think it didn't form me into who I am for a certain reason. I think it just formed me into who I am just because that's just how it happened to happen this time.
I don't think when I say that there's reasoning to it, what I really mean is that, okay, this is what I think. I think that there is something beyond me, that there is an unknown thing that will never be known, which you agreed with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I also think that it's fine, and actually there is no other way, but to continue to search for that unknown. You know, that's how we spend our life. We have to that's all we really, what else is there to do but to research the unknown? But I think that there's something beyond me that I will never truly understand. but that I can trust by just looking at the way that the world works and the way that nature flows, that like it makes sense. It's just that there's so much going on that our human brains can't process it all. Like, there is so much going on into just why a leaf would blow in the wind that like I'm never going to be able to tell you like, oh, it's because like way back to the Big Bang, you know, and then follow all the way through to this moment. Like, I can't keep track of all that. I could never keep track of all that. But things happen that way. Like, I can't sit here and say like, oh no, that is not attached to anything. It's just blowing in the wind on its own. Like, the Big Bang has nothing to do with that.
Right.
Big Bang's actually one of my favorite things to look at because I love science, but at the same time, I think that scientific thought is incomplete to some extent, or at least has led society astray in some regards because it lives in an extreme just like religion did.
Right.
And if you haven't gathered so far, I very much don't like believing in extremes, or at least sitting in an extreme without acknowledging that the other extreme exists and is likely to come about.
Yeah.
So with the Big Bang, you know, that is science's coup d'etat, right? That's the word, the phrase, I think, where it's like grand. Like, that is their version of the creation myth. That is the scientific, it's just saying, like, this is how we were created.
Or how they believe we were created.
Yeah. First off, it is just a theory. They still can't really prove it because it's not provable.
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't say anything about why. It's just explaining something that happened. And that's all science ever really does. It doesn't give you anything. It just says, yeah, that car did this because it got up to this speed and did this and that. But it doesn't say why. It says, like, some people as scientists will say, like, well, that's why. It's because it went this speed and this speed. But why did it go that speed? Why did it do this? Why did it do that? Because why is unanswerable. I found this out with my dad because there's a day where I just started asking him why about everything. And I realized I could keep going forever because every answer he gave me, I'd be like, okay, but why that? But why that? But what's happened is, and it's not that it's the only option with science, is that you just have to at some point give up. You just have to be like, this is as far as we can go.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the reality. But I think people, because of that, just ignore anything outside of it. You know, because you can't know everything that's unknown, we just ignore that the unknown exists. Because we can't know why the Big Bang came about, we can't ponder and think about, we just have to stay within the confines of science. And then you just kind of forget that the unknown does exist. Like, you just start believing that it doesn't exist. You start thinking like, you know what? No, God can't be a thing. There's no reason for God to exist. Life is just pointless and meaningless and this and that. And you kind of trap yourself in a prison. You kind of confine yourself into, quite frankly, a miserable life. So at least to me, looking from the outside now.
Because obviously there's no known, because it's even just as simple as the thing of God. It's like, it's not known that there's a God. It's not known that there isn't a God. It's a full unknown thing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically all Taoism is about is just sitting with the unknown. It's just like accepting that, like, it's very much an acceptance thing. It's not trying to do anything. It's just accepting, like, that's just the way it is.
Right.
We're never going to know it all. Things are constantly going to fluctuate from good to bad. Life's going to play out. You're going to die. That's very important in human psychology, is death. And that's why I am challenging the idea that, you know, once we die, that's it, is because what I interpret that as is that's a human reaction to control death. That is you saying, once I'm dead, I'm dead, because you want to have control in it. You don't want to die and then find out that there's something else afterwards, because then it's unknown.
It's not that I don't want to find out if there's anything afterwards, right? It's just what you know from what you. I don't think there's anything else afterwards. What I'm saying is
that it's a comforting thought to some extent. It's like a comforting thought to think that, like, once I'm dead, because life is full of pain. If you can live your life thinking that like once you die, that's it, and you don't have to go on living anymore, there's kind of a freedom in that. It's kind of like, well, then once I die, I don't have to suffer anymore. I don't have to go through pain anymore. It's kind of like a release, you know? That's kind of what they talk about with near-death experiences and ego death in general, is that you just kind of like let go. But I think it's kind of incomplete. I think that it's just, I don't think that death exists in the form that humans think of death. Because humans think of death as a finality, as like an end point. I think of it as just one end of the circle before going back up to the other end.
Okay.
I think the circle is one of the best shapes to be created. There's even a theory that the universe, when they're looking at how it's going to end, that it's just going to fold back in on itself and thus create the Big Bang again. I very much like that. I would not, I mean, there's no way to ever prove it, of course. But like one of the things that I like to believe in, especially when talking about my ideas of the third and fourth dimension, right? The barrier of time, which is also scientifically like supported. So like, I'm not just saying stuff, but like if it exists that time is a human construct, you know, that's walling us in. But once you go beyond human construct, time exists all at one point. That's where I question free will, because that means that we've already done everything. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
We're on a train, but the roller coaster already exists. Or we're in a cart, whatever, roller coaster. But the whole thing already is there. We're just
following the tracks.
Yeah, we're just following the tracks. But if you look at the tracks, they've always been there, the way that they are. And if you exist now, how can you ever stop existing? Because this moment can never be pulled away. You can't erase this moment in time. It happened. It's happening right now.
Right.
So how can you ever truly die if this moment is always existing somewhere? Always out there in time.
Well, and I always just look at it in just from my own perspective. It's just, well, it may be having it all at once, but it's not for me. I'm not living it all at the same time.
That's fair. That's a very fair point.
It's just I'm living it. I get that moment and then it passes and I can't get back to it. So,
I mean, just like I've been saying, from my perspective, everybody is actually a good Taoist and a bad Taoist. Whether or not they label themselves that way. I mean, I don't even care about labeling Taoism. Like, that's just, labels are just like signs, like road signs, pointing you in the direction of a town. But we like to get attached to labels a lot, where it's like the label is the thing. It's not a sign pointing at a thing. So like going back into Kendrick, if the abuse allegations turned out to be true, Kendrick will therefore be known as an abuser.
Right.
That will never go away. He'll just be known as an abuser. And if you do that, where the contradiction comes in is that a lot of people who would cancel him for that are the people that say, oh, people need to grow. People need to change. People need to, you know, be better. How does somebody be better if you're always going to call them if you're always going to carry that weight of the past? If you're always going to call somebody an alcoholic, why would they not be an alcoholic?
Right.
What incentive do they have to not be an alcoholic? If no matter what they do, you're like, yeah, but you're an alcoholic. You know?
Yeah.
Like, how is a person supposed to grow through that? And so what you get is the only people who really survive in the world are the people that are able to just be like, yeah, sure, I'm an abuser. I did that thing, but I don't do that anymore.
Right.
You can call me that because I did it, but I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Is this kind of along the lines where you thought things would go or not?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else you want to get into here before we wrap up?
Nah, I don't think so. I think that's kind of a good place to stop.
Or I guess
unless you have something.
So you said last time that you have a certain, like, the people you keep around because you enjoy you think they're very interesting, the way they live their lives, their philosophies. I was curious how you view that I live my life.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Because, I mean, you see me as the perspective from work, which isn't necessarily like the full person. It's the, you know, the character at work.
Again, like Kendrick, there's integrity to people. You can tell how a person is from very little, especially by how their actions and words translate to each other. You know? Obviously, I don't know everything about you. I don't know everything that you have in your closet or past or history.
I know I got a lot of shirts.
But yeah, as a human being, I feel like, I mean, I kind of have an idea of who you are intuitively, though. Because again, when you try to start explaining things, you have to put labels on it, and then it kind of loses. Because the thing about labels that Taoism really harps on is that it isn't the full truth. You know, by doing a label, it's organizing the world, and the world is chaotic and unorganized. So as soon as you try to organize it, you lose it. So if I was to sit here and try to explain everything, I mean, 'cause I've not even really thought about it, to be quite frank, I would probably not be able to accurately. Throughout all of this, I haven't even been accurately to explain everything. There's slip ups, there's mistakes, and everything that I've said today. There are things that I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't agree with. Like, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
It's just kind of fun to talk about.
It is.
Just having fun.
Yeah.
But I gotta go to the bathroom, so we gotta wrap this up.
Again.
Yeah. Yep. That's actually how we ended the last one, too. Last podcast episode.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I've been drinking a lot of water, I guess.
It's a good thing.
All right. Well, I wonder how much longer we're going to stick in the serious conversation. Man, kind of sucking the life force out of everything.
I know.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.